Welcome to the podcast. This is Eric Salzman along with Kevin Doherty and Richie Bennett. How are you guys?
What's
Doing
up?
good.
How you doing?
So as David Muir would do on ABC News, breaking news as we come on the air.
Woo!
Get everybody hyped up. Now a lot
Yeah.
of times David would do that and the news broke like 15 hours before and it wasn't that exciting. But this is exciting as we've been going on about this. So apparently the Justice Department is dropping its investigation of Chairman Powell's cost overruns at the new Fed building. And that should clear the way for Mr. Warsh to become the next chairman of the Federal Reserve.
I think that's the case. I mean, that was what was holding it up, right? The committee is what, 13, 11
Yeah. Yep.
Republican?
Yep.
Everybody's going to vote on party lines. And the big thing was Tom Tillis was like, you got to drop this thing. And he's a Republican.
Hmm.
And Trump alluded to that on CNBC the other day. He
Right.
basically said, like, this guy's got me.
He
Like,
does.
I got to do something because, this guy's got me. He's got the vote and I can't do it. I can't fire him.
Right.
So
Right. And he's not running for reelection, so you can't go down to
right,
North Carolina and hammer him.
right.
Yeah, I mean that should do it, and at least that removes, like Richie, you were saying before we came on the air, that it definitely removes a piece of uncertainty. Now the front end of the yield curve, the 2 years rallied right away like 5 basis points, and I we assume that stocks are probably going to follow, right? And probably all risk assets for that.
Yeah, I would think, right? I would think, although, like, you'll know better than I, Eric and Kevin, but isn't his message kind of like, okay, I'm going to stay independent from Trump? This is Warsh, I'm saying, right? And yes, I think that AI, right? His big thing is AI is going to cause deflation, perhaps, right? So we don't have to worry about inflation when I come aboard, and therefore I can lower rates and keep the economy steaming, and risk assets steaming. But his big thing, right, with Bessett, is that this balance sheet at the Fed is too big.
Yep.
So people aren't like connecting the dots. I don't think, like, he wants this thing like it's at like 6.5 trillion, and it was at 9, right? But it used
Hmm.
to be at, like, 500
So
billion or something.
some small, yeah, but 800 million, I think, was the number. Billion, I'm sorry, prior to the
Oh,
2008.
yeah. And so by him saying that, that's effectively, you know, not so bueno for liquidity, right? If he's really going to like shut down the balance sheet at the Fed, that's got to have some effect, no?
Well,
But he
he
said
did
he's going to take
say
his time.
he said that right. He said that it took 18 years to develop, and he called it a problem, which is interesting because everybody else on that board has bought into quantitative easing and the balance sheet and the way the Fed does things. And we get into that because yeah, he was pretty harsh, pretty much on the Powell Fed in general, and during his testimony or his confirmation hearing. But yeah, that's his. It's going to be slow. I think what they are talking about, I think we talked about this last week, is that there'll be some sort of a shadow monetary policy at the Treasury Department where they'll work hand in hand. So if they want to start selling gradually some of the Treasury bonds, maybe the longer dated stuff, they'll work with Treasury as far as how much gets issued, right? Now, right now, every month, I believe I'm right about this. So every month now the Treasury issues 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years. Those are the issuances, and they come every month. They're not always a new issue. Sometimes they call it a reopening, where they just get more of the one that they made the month before. But those numbers are like it's about 360 billion a month that they come with every month, of all those different maturities. So I think the thought is that you kind of fine tune that and you kind of offset what the Fed's balance sheet is reducing by with these new with you lower the issuance as the Fed potentially sells some of these assets.
Mm.
Um, And then Kevin, like you said, in the front end of the curve, now they'll be issuing more on the front end of the curve because they need the money, right? So they, but and I think that you were saying, Kevin, last week would actually be a nice liquidity. It would be positive for liquidity.
Right.
Um, so, and now, of course, that brings, it's kind of scary if we have too much issuance in the front end of the curve, because that means everybody's got to re-up every 6 months or 1 year. You know what I'm saying? If it's more bills in less 30 years and less 10 years, then, we run the risk of a problem happening, at the auctions and, stuff like that. So,
This
We
is
love,
like the classic emerging markets problem, is
right,
yes,
because they can't issue
right.
way out into the future like the US can, or Europe or Japan, that if there is a short-term crisis, it suddenly becomes a big crisis
right.
because they have so much they need to roll so soon.
Yeah. We like to call that asset liability management 101. Because if you issue a shit ton, that's a technical term, 30-year bonds, right? And they even talked about, I remember at one point, right? Weren't they talking about 100-year bonds?
100 year, yeah.
Yeah. If you can get those through at a good number as the issuer, you do that all day, right? Like
Sure.
you don't have to, you lock that up forever and you don't care what happens for a long time for that pocket of money,
I
right?
think Austria did a 100 year
Yeah.
bond.
I mean, as a a central banker, and somebody came and pitched me that idea, if I was a central banker, I'd be like, "Yeah, dude, you can make that happen all day. Go all day."
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, and that
exactly
was
right. Like if anything can happen in the next 6 months, right? 3 months, 6 months, rates go somewhere, crazy things happen. You're always at risk. And back when in '08 and '09, when everything was like it's 0% interest rates and it's going to be 0% interest rates forever and ever and ever.
right.
Okay. But even still, as an asset liability manager, I would think you want to go long too, as
Sure.
an issuer.
Talk about certainty.
Right.
Right. I mean, your grandchildren may not be alive by the time that thing matures.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, look, a lot of I guess we'll do the Warsh thing now. A lot of what he said was, and he said a couple of things that you'd think the Democrats would have listened to and been like, yeah, we agree with that. And one of them was, he said, look, when we lower the Fed is before all this started in 2008, we focused on the front end of the yield curve, lowering our policy rate or raising our policy rate for inflation and the dual mandate for full employment. But what he said was that when we lower rates like that, it helps everybody. It helps everybody's credit cards. It helps prime rates. It helps borrowing rates. It puts money into the economy. It creates liquidity. He said, but when you do the quantitative easing like they did from 2008 to the present, it really it benefits those with lots of financial assets, i.e., the wealthy. And he goes, and unfortunately, most fellow Americans don't have a lot of financial assets. So I think his quote was, so they're asking what's in it for them. And you'd think that, that would resonate with Liz and all the other Democrats who just attacked him. But it's all along party lines, and because that's the Republican nominee, they're going to hammer him, and vice versa. When there's a Democrat in office. But yeah, I mean, he said a lot of things that he also said, and this is, I think, you get to your point, Richie. When the Fed is or a central bank is just the unlimited non-economic buyer of debt, right? Congress doesn't have to worry about balancing budgets or spending or anything like that, because there's this big blob non-economic buyer. Doesn't care if they're rich, cheap, high, low. They're going to buy every month. And that makes making the hard decisions, kicking the can down the road. And they're talking about that as well. So, I thought he had a lot of good points.
Yeah. I think too, like to go to your point about the political thing, Liz Warren I didn't even read the article, but I saw a headline that said the day Liz Warren agreed with Donald Trump, right? And it was basically saying when Biden took the job, got elected, there's like numerous instances of her writing letters. She wrote an op-ed in the journal, the Wall Street Journal. They published it. Like how rates have to be lowered now to Powell, right? Like going after Powell, just as Big Don has been doing. And then the other day, she's like pointing at Warsh and this and that. And I'm like, Madam Senator, I think he's kind of talking your language. I could be wrong, but I think he's trying to do what we're saying.
Right. Yeah. And I don't look, I honestly don't think that many people in Congress understand what quantitative easing did. They're all about the income inequality gap getting bigger and bigger, and and then going after guys like Druckenmiller and every other big kind of financial titan, when this policy that they've been pounding on the table, wanting more and more and more, it benefited those guys, right? I mean, because it basically said to every endowment, every pension fund, every life insurance company that now you got to buy, you can't buy treasuries anymore, and you can't buy the safe stuff because it doesn't give you enough yield to meet your liabilities. But you got to go buy this private equity deal. You got to go give your money to Leon Black and Apollo and Steve Schwarzman. And so it created this just incredible transfer of wealth. And I just don't think they get it. I mean, honestly, I think if someone sat down and explained it to them like that, maybe they'd get it. Maybe. But they don't, I mean, you'll see like Neil Kachkar, all those guys are they're the doves, they're the liberals, and they're the ones that are always pounding on the table wanting more QE and getting angry about quantitative tightening when they start reversing the policy. So it's really interesting. And I think that Warsh did a really good job, kind of pointing all that out.
Well, I think you pointed it out before. It depends who's in power at any given time. And if it's your guy or gal, you want as much liquidity as can possibly be pumped into the system. When it's not, when it's the other, when it's the enemy, you don't, because you don't want to help them and you're hoping that you'll get back in power 4 years later. And it's just unfortunate that that's the dance that we're in.
Yeah, I was thinking about. I wrote that little piece. I was thinking about how she said like, how do I know that you don't have investments that are from Jeffrey Epstein? Somehow they managed to work Jeffrey Epstein into this.
You always have to work Jeffrey Epstein into the game,
or investments related to Donald Trump. With I guess with what Stan Druckenmiller has and what Kevin Warsh had in the Duquesne funds. And I was thinking like, okay, these are two really like Druckenmiller may be the best. I think he's got to be number one or two best investors in my lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, think about it, right? Like all the stuff that Soros did that broke the British pound, almost made England bankrupt. That wasn't Soros is smart for sure, but he's in a corner office, right? And guys like Druckenmiller are like, boss, we need to do this. All right, do it. And I'm sure Druckenmiller was thrilled that he didn't get the negative vibe in the world, right? There's lots of people that don't like Soros for various reasons, but Druckenmiller is like solid, like he kind of knows. And Warsh obviously was paid by Druckenmiller to give some sort of advice, some consulting ideas. So.
Well, it was funny because I was thinking like, okay, these are two smart guys, and now let's think about all the investments that would be associated with Donald Trump. I mean, every single one has gone completely tits up, right? I mean, it's the university, the steaks, the vodka, the casinos,
even.
Well, now and today they're possibly going to take over Spirit Airlines, and they're like, yeah, there was a Trump shuttle that went bust.
Right. Air Trump. I remember that was the New York, Boston, Washington,
they
D.C.
took it over from Eastern Airlines, I think.
Right. So I don't think that they've got any. By that, I'd say they don't have any investments with Don in any of his past or current things. And then I don't know if Jeffrey Epstein ever produced anything to invest in. So
Right.
I don't think they went to him for tax advice or stuff that whatever Leon Black did, but yeah, so that's something. And speaking of that, so I read an article, I think it was this morning in the Financial Times, that you remember when Trump had that dinner down in Mar-a-Lago, I think it's in Mar-a-Lago, or certainly in West Palm, to promote the Trump meme coin. It was, I think it's Dollar Trump, the meme coin.
Yeah.
And last year, so like you had to have bought a certain amount. And if you, I think it was the top couple of hundred people who bought the most of the meme coin got invited to this gala event. And I
Yeah.
think like the top 20 or 30, maybe a little less, got invited to actually sit down with Donald Trump and have dinner with him. Um,
Yeah.
and they said in 2025 that the median holdings for the people to be invited to that thing was like 3.2 million or something like that, $3.2 million worth of Trump meme coin. And this year it is 550,000 or so. So it's dropped quite a bit. One of the
And
sorry,
And
Kevin.
the real cost of attending the dinner is a fraction of that because that's just the amount of the token you need to hold. And so people did some analysis, and yes, you hold that, but once the contest is over, you can sell your tokens into the market and still get your invitation.
Mhm.
And the cost of it could have been as low as $30,000 to get invited to that dinner, which is cheap compared to the other political fundraising dinners that you might be having that you might have to cash out for. So
So
Right.
I'm no tax attorney, but does that get you a nice write-off, the 30 grand? Is that considered a political contribution?
I don't know.
Does that skirt rules of maximum contributions that people can make? Because maybe it's a free dinner, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now the winner last year, if you remember, was Justin Sun, right? And Justin
Mhm.
Sun, remember he not only bought all the meme coin, I think he bought like $70 million, a crazy number, last year. And part of the reason, and he also owns he also invested in World Liberty Financial, the Trump company,
Right.
and he had all those tokens, and he. I believe this very recently is suing now. He's suing World Liberty Financial because they wouldn't let him sell out of his tokens.
Hmm.
Even then, I believe that Son is still number one for this dinner. Like he still owns he still bought the most Trump meme coin to get invited to the dinner. So
Is
maybe he's
is
doing that so we can get in the same room with the president and yell at him for free my tokens.
I was
Let
going to
people
say, like,
go.
do you think he's going to go to the dinner? Like, am he suing them?
He is an interesting dude. I'll put it that way, and we'll try and keep us on the right side of a potential lawsuit. Um, Within the crypto community, I think it's um, he would be considered kind of the last really bad actor who's still out there. So after Sam Bankman-Fried um, did the dirt, um, the what is it the dirt sleep
Yeah,
the
the
dirt
dirt
nap,
nap. Yeah,
yeah, and a bunch of other guys who were also playing very fast and loose with legality and their investors all went down that year. So there was, if you remember, Do Kwon, who's a guy who
yeah.
created this Terra Luna ecosystem, and now he's bouncing around courtrooms and is likely to do hard time. There was a big hedge fund, Three Arrows Capital, that went down. There was Celsius, that their founder, who was a billionaire before he got into crypto, Alex Mashinsky, he got tied up and he's in prison. So anyway, after all that, Justin Sun is the guy that even people within crypto really don't trust. And there's an interesting anecdote. When he launched his token, um, 5 or 6 years ago, kind of when all these were in this token issuance wave, um, the, the it ended up not performing well and then performing well and then performing very well, but everyone was still very wary of him. And I remember someone asked one of his childhood friends, who was also big into crypto, um, why didn't you invest in his project day one? You know the guy. You grew up with them. You obviously had a chance to invest in his project. And the answer was, yeah, I did know him very well. And that's why I did not invest in his project, because I know exactly who he is. And so, yeah, I mean, all of the public information is that in this case, World Liberty Financial is not treating him fairly. They've frozen his tokens, and it's not a good look for World Liberty and by extension the Trumps. But to have, the kind of the the opponent of World Liberty is not, someone who's clean.
Right.
Put it
So
that way.
when is this supposed to go down, this dinner?
Uh,
I think it's
Like
soon.
soon? Like
well,
next week?
I have to find my invitation. Hold on. Let's see. The 297 biggest holders of Trump meme coin granted to a conference on Saturday. So it's coming up Saturday,
Saturday.
featuring speeches by the president and Mike Tyson.
Damn it.
Now,
I'm too late. I'd love to go.
but here's a classic Trumpian move. Because he's the president, he's got a lot going on. He could cancel. Like, you're not getting your money back. Like, literally, not only could he cancel, the whole dinner could be canceled at any notice. Like, and there's no rain check. I don't think. I think remember when we were kids and you hold on to your thing in case the game got rained out. There's no rain check for this, I believe. So,
and people were complaining about that last year, that he was just barely there, and it wasn't the sit down and shake the president's hand moment they hoped it would be.
So
it sounds a little like if it does happen, it would be great, right? Like if this guy is suing everybody at World Life and they don't like him and they froze his assets, but yet he still shows up to the dinner. I hope that happens. It reminds me of a little bit of the Beach Boys. So Brian Wilson, the mastermind behind all the writing of the music, Mike Love, his cousin, is usually the front voice that you hear on a Beach Boys tune. Mike Love, I think, has sued Brian Wilson and back and forth like 75 times, right? Like just crazy. And I think they were both married like 3 or 4 times, and like 2 times each, one was the best man at the other one's wedding, right? But like the game keeps going. He just must have like lawyers on retainer. Like, yeah, I'm gonna sue my cousin Brian again. He's stealing from me, and it's nuts. It's nuts.
Well, from the sublime, I'm not even going to call this the sublime, from the ridiculous to the more ridiculous. Another big breaking news story that happened yesterday. I'm going to throw it to you, Kevin. We've discovered that the mystery of the famous Polymarket trade has been solved.
Yeah, that's right. One of the many mysterious Polymarket trades, but this one was a spike in the odds that Maduro would be out of power by the end of the month, by the end of January, and some late trades came in that looked suspicious, new accounts, just the classic behavior that says you're going to be investigated. And it was dumb to do. So it turns out that at least there's a charge, so innocent until proven guilty and all that. But one of the military planners of that operation, a special forces guy, who was directly involved in planning for the Maduro capture, is being accused of placing $33,000 worth of trades that netted him $400,000 profit on that.
So this guy was a
So,
big guy. He wasn't like a soldier. He was, I mean, he
well,
was,
he's yes, but he's not a general or a colonel,
right.
but he was still a special forces guy. I think he was a
Right.
sergeant, but I
Hmm.
don't quote me on that. But he was involved in the planning. He was
Right.
actively involved, so he knew everything that was going on. And it's unfortunate, but it's inevitable that this was going to happen eventually. And I guess I mean, for his sake, thank God the operation was a success because,
Oh,
think ahead because now if you're, one of these smart guys and who are supposed to be monitoring global events and risk and all of that, and you're in China or Iran or Russia or North Korea, you should be monitoring these markets, right? And if you see a massive spike when there's no public news available, might that tip somebody off that something might be coming
right.
and they need to, wake up the Praetorian Guard and say, guys, pay attention, get the coffee pot on high for the next couple days or week because something may be up.
Hmm. Well, that could be the new kind of intelligence, right? Is that you're constantly surveilling the polymarket markets to make sure that you're not being invaded.
Yeah. Um,
It's like the original Wall Street movie, Blue Horseshoe Loves, and then multiply
Yeah.
it by 100 times because people might get killed, not just people buying the stock, but people might get killed if you don't pay attention.
There's something very funny about a terrible criminal, right? I mean, just somebody who just can't like you can tell he never did this. Well, I guess going for him, he's new to this, right? Just
yeah.
apparently like he called up Polymarket and tried to get his account deleted. And he did everything that you would do that literally like it would take some guy or gal that just joined the FBI from from Quantico yesterday would have figured that out, right? And if they didn't, they wouldn't be in the FBI anymore.
Right. And you Polymarket jumped to the front and said basically they're standing by like we reported this guy. Like that was always the big thing in the Vegas casinos when you had the only place that was kind of like legalized gambling was Nevada. And they always claimed that anytime there was some shady move on a game or whatever, they would report it and the thief would be caught. Right. So allow us to just keep policing ourselves because we can find the thieves.
Well,
Now,
there
Kevin,
was
you had
another
a
one that's a little bit more humorous that happened, I guess, yesterday with one of the weather markets. They have these daily markets about what's the highest temperature going to be in a certain location on a given day. And, some sophisticated, there are explanations about why this is a good thing for, I don't know, corn farmers, hedging out risk of, unseasonably hot or cold weather, whatever it is. And so there's an active market for the high temperature of the day in Paris, France. And someone put some bets in. And then in the final minutes before the contract expiry, when the temperature at that time determines uh, what the who the winners and losers of the contract are. There was a very unusual spike in temperature at one of the monitoring stations that happened to be at the airport, Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris. And so it hasn't been proven yet, but the suspicion is somebody who had money in play bought the it was I believe it was they said that it was that there was going to be a high of 21 degrees, and at the time that some big bets were placed that was paying off at should have written this down, but it was some huge like 400 to 1 or something, because at the current time the temperature was only 18 degrees, but then this monitoring station spiked. And so the suspicion is that somebody went there with a heat generating device and like, and put it up, which is again, okay. We shouldn't be surprised that this happened, but it's not very subtle when you do that. It's like you're talking about with the casino. Like, of course, there's going to be an investigation that gets opened on the back of that.
Right.
Do you think like hooded guys in like on ninja bikes came by with like hair dryers and like fired at the sensor or something? Like or lit
Or
and everybody
flares,
light
the soccer games, they're always holding up flares. Just
right,
take
right.
a road flare next to
Or
it.
like play Freebird and like everybody lights their big lighter. Like that's fabulous. What a crazy world, dude.
I think we've probably gotten more joy on this podcast out of talking about prediction markets than
And
any
it's
other
great.
topic.
And
And
yeah.
it's not
And
going to
this will
stop.
probably be material every week. I mean,
Oh,
Yeah.
it's just,
nothing.
when you can bet on everything,
Yeah.
everything.
There's nothing that stops it.
So let's move from that to some. So Kevin, you made an awesome call last week on Bitcoin,
Mhm.
and it seems to have continued on. So tell us what's going on. I see it's around 78,000 today.
Yeah, it's working a little bit. It's still, I mean, it was 75 to 78 is not that big of a move, but uh the the fact that it's broken through 75 and held that level is important. But these technical indicators are pointing towards potentially much bigger gains to come. And so I think we talked last week, the 100-day moving average
Yep.
got breached for the first time since the October high. And so it's staying above that level. We talked about the funding rates on the futures market and about how those were a few weeks ago were at record highs for the last few years. Those rates have now been negative for 47 days in a row. And just before we started the recording today, I checked and they're hovering right at zero. And on some exchanges, slightly above zero. So that might be flipping positive. And then the balance of Bitcoin that is currently on an exchange somewhere is the lowest that it's been in 3 years. And this is important because Bitcoin, unlike stocks and other, if you want to sell your Bitcoin or Ethereum or any other cryptocurrency, you have to deposit it onto an exchange. It has to physically be there before you can sell it. And so monitoring exchange balances has been a sometimes effective tool to show, if there's a lot of Bitcoin on an exchange, that means people have probably moved it there with the intention of selling. But when there's not much Bitcoin on an exchange, it indicates that people are happy to hold their Bitcoin in their private wallets
Mhm.
or in a third party custodian where it's safer than being held, on an exchange. And
Right.
so the collectively these indicators that have been powerful in the past are signaling that the market may be flipping into a potentially sustainable bull market, again with the caveat, unless things that I ran go horribly wrong again, and then all bets are off.
I will say that I literally I think on Monday, I think it was Monday, I actually my strategy position actually got back to even.
And sorry, I should have mentioned that. That's another
Yes, the
factor that MicroStrategy bought $2.5 billion worth of Bitcoin in the last week, which is their biggest purchase in the last 18 months. And so, and yeah, and it's trading now again right around its NAV, where it had dipped below NAV for the last few months. So, yeah, it's we'll see, but things are pointing in the right direction.
good. Okay. Richie, any money making solutions for us this week?
Yes. Matter of fact, I do have a few.
Please.
Um, so the NFL draft was started last night. Mendoza, the quarterback from Indiana, went first as a surprise to no one, to the Raiders. But people may not understand his background is a financial guy. So I've written down on my to-do list, someday, some way, Mr. Mendoza is going to show up on our podcast. With the caveat, I will tell him to get him on. We are not going to talk X's and O's of any football game. We are going to pick his brain on finance. So he has been a commercial real estate intern and an investment advisor intern in his days. And I will make the final talk about him is there was one school when he was coming out of high school in Miami that in Division I or 1AA that cared about him. And that was Yale University. So he went to Yale before he became big. He ended up going to Cal and then Indiana, but that was the draft first guy last night. So I was pretty happy with the Jets pick. They picked second. Tonight, there's going to be the second and third rounds. So all this is important because it forms the team for next year. But we're in the throes of the NBA playoffs. And some people asked me, do you make picks on the NHL? And I said, of course. So we don't have them today, but next week we'll do some NHL picks.
I will, Richie, I just to interrupt. I took the Sabres 15-1 to win it all.
There you go.
They're up 2-1 to the Bees right now.
Yep. And it's so exciting, you know, anybody, even if you're kind of a casual hockey fan, to watch NHL playoff hockey is just insane. So we're going to keep going.
Just to interrupt you one last time is that yesterday, I wish I had it up, I could show you. It was a meme because a bunch of embellishment calls went down in the Pittsburgh Flyer series, the Penguins Flyers. And apparently Sid Crosby caught as he was coming into the face-off circle, I can't remember which Flyer did it, but kind of pulled the stick back. And I think he hit Sid in the face. I don't know how hard he hit him in the face, but hit him in the face. And Sid flopped and went down. And they called him for embellishment. And then a meme yesterday was Sid, and they had superimposed like a pink tutu on him. So we'll have that for the next podcast.
Yes. But for tonight, we're going to go with, which is a unique thing kind of for us to do, but every favorite in the NBA we're taking tonight, Friday night, April 24th, meaning Boston Celtics -6.5, Houston Rockets -9, and the San Antonio Spurs -2.5, despite Wemby maybe not playing because of a concussion.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go with all the favorites tonight in the NBA, and this should be interesting.
Okay. Well, guys, good stuff. I hope you have a great weekend, and we'll be back with more hijinks next week.
Awesome.